And right now, President Obama getting ready to be driven the 16 blocks to the United States Capitol to address Congress and to address you, the nation. But just hours ago, also on Capitol Hill, all eyes were on ISIS at the House Armed Services Committee. 2 years ago, President Obama referred to ISIS as the JV team. And cut to today, President Obama again talking ISIS, this time to NBC's Matt Lauer.
Ultimately, what ISIL represents is a blind alley for the region, and people will recognize that the same way that over time they turned on Al-Qaeda because they saw that this doesn't lead anywhere.
A blind alley? Well, that's not what his former CIA director says. Today, ex-CIA Director Michael Morrell testifying that ISIS is growing faster than Al-Qaeda ever did.
ISIS poses a significant strategic and lethal threat to the United States of America. We have not faced the likes of it before.
Global jihad is metastasized, and time is not on our side.
There are thousands of ISIS sympathizers in the United States, more than Al-Qaeda ever had.
My fear is that being number two, Al-Qaeda will strike in a larger way because they're in a battle for influence.
ISIS has gained affiliates faster than Al-Qaeda ever did. From nothing a year ago, there are now militant groups in nearly 20 countries that have sworn allegiance to ISIS. They have conducted attacks that have already killed Americans, and they carry the potential to themselves grab large amounts of territory.
House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy goes on the record. Good evening, sir.
Thank you for having me.
What do you hope to hear from President Obama tonight at the State of the Union?
You know what I really want to hear? I want to hear a plan to defeat ISIS. Think about it for a moment. From Paris to San Bernardino to Philadelphia to this morning in Istanbul. This is a serious threat. This world is not safe. And I don't want to hear a campaign speech. I want to hear a plan to defeat ISIS.
All right. Well, you know the JV comment of a couple years ago. That's the stale one. But today, telling Matt Lauer, as we've just heard, that ISIL is a blind alley, and people recognize that the same way they saw with Al-Qaeda, because this doesn't lead anywhere. So I guess that's sort of hoping it away.
Listen, this president wants to just leave this problem to the next president instead of solving it. You look at what other comments have been said inside Congress today, that ISIS has grown into 20 countries, a threat that we have never seen before. You look what's happening around the world, and a lot of it is the foreign policy that he's put forth. I mean, look at what Iran has done, and he's rewarded them.
Do you think he thinks he has a successful strategy against ISIS?
Well, even in his own words, remember when he came back from his golf, when ISIS first started moving after he made his first comment about a JV team, and they asked him, do you have a plan? He said no. He still has not come up with a plan. He was going to contain them. He still has not put a plan to defeat them, and they've only expanded. I don't know what he's thinking, but when you talk to world leaders around, they question what we're doing.
Well, there's a lot of attention on ISIS, Al-Qaeda, but there's also other groups that have declared allegiance with ISIS, like Boko Haram in North Africa. Al-Shabaab is another terrorist organization. I mean, there is growing terrorism around the country, around the world.
They're growing because America has taken a step back. Why do you think North Korea went to test another nuclear weapon? Because they saw what happened, the relationship he has with Iran. Then what did Iran do today about picking up American Navy officers? His foreign policy is making it more unsafe, because as America steps back, Iran and Putin step forward as well as ISIS.
What's the danger to us? How do you describe it?
Well, the danger to us, just look around the world. Look at the threats that are happening. We're losing our freedoms because we're fearful of what's going on. Look at San Bernardino. Look at the movement that's happening on the internet of recruiting people every day. Look at the success they're having in other countries as well. That's not the world we want for our children.
How did that Hellfire, I think it was probably a dummy missile, how did that end up in Cuba by mistake?
How could it even possibly be shipped into Cuba?
Well, that's what I'm just asking. Like, how did that happen?
But how did it even get to Cuba, and why don't we have it back? And why aren't we doing everything in our power to make sure it gets back before it goes to China or to North Korea, so everybody else has that technology? If this is so-called of a friend, remember what's in Cuba. That's a dictator that hasn't changed any of their philosophy or beliefs about America. It's only our president who changed his belief about Cuba.
Why isn't there more outrage about that. I mean, when I saw that, I thought that this is really terrible news. I mean, we don't want technology going to these other nations, but I don't hear a lot of people.
You know, it's just now coming forward, but the good part is the House isn't sitting and waiting. Just today, we passed new sanctions on North Korea. Tomorrow, we'll pass new sanctions on Iran. You know, the Treasury Department said they were going to pass new sanctions on Iran because they broke with the United Nations agreement in their testing of missiles. And 42 minutes later, this administration pulled it back.
Do you expect the president to sign any of this?
Well, if you look at the vote in the floor of the North Korea, bipartisan, overwhelming both sides of the aisle. But this president is tone deaf. Can't he see what's going on around the world? Can't he see the feelings that's happening in America? And it's a lot of his actions that is causing this to grow. ISIS is not a JV team. This is serious. They're in 20 different countries, and we need to take them serious and have a strategy to defeat them.
Leader McCarthy, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.